The teams that are willing, like an individual, willing to kind of have these frank discussions, whereas 99% of teams don't, you start becoming the rare team. You start becoming the team that can solve challenges. We're not here to sugarcoat anything. We've had challenges.
We know as a collective we are stronger. We all see the markets from different lenses. If we can all just be on that same that vibration, that same frequency, we are all going to have a better day.
I want to speak about today toxic individualism within a trading floor setting and building trading teams, especially in a culture where the likes of Tim Ferriss, Andrew Huberman, Lex Friedman are the so-called messiahs in modern day culture of growth, hacks, optimization of an individual. But does that leave anything shortchanged for connection, community, and people becoming more empathetic? And the reason why I want to speak about this topic today, along with you, Peter, is we have been involved in training floors. We've been setting up a training floor here in Cyprus the last couple of years. And any training floor, and being involved in training floors for the last 20 years, there is a decline of connectivity, of relational intelligence, and how people connect with each other, especially in a space where individuals are in a heightened sense of fight or flight mode. And because there's this heightened sense of fight or flight, we're at the mercy of our ego. And because we're at the mercy of our ego is our ability to connect with others in an empathetic way, in a performance way. And connected intelligence is a form of a high performance pursuit if you know how to create the architecture, the social engineering. And I know, and I want to kickstart or segue into this area, is yesterday we've had a few traders join our current 6-week training program, and they have an experience on one of our trading floors live. And I know you do your big Al Pacino any given Sunday speech to these traders. And I think before we start talking about, growth that sometimes becomes narcissism in disguise, now there's loads of benefits of, our best traders are so good at self-improvement, increasing their individual performance, their individual mastery. But if we are a world of connected beings, how do we organize a training floor of the future that operates almost at a warp speed of knowledge transfer, of opportunity observations? And I think the training teams that survive the next era are the ones who actually deliberately work on relationships, deliberately work on and remedy fast when there's a situation on the floor. And that's where I think we take a lot of pride here in the Cyprus office. When there's a challenge, we take it on. But I want to start off with, we had a whole bunch of traders yesterday, and you set the mandate for all of these traders, our senior traders, our junior traders, the mandate of operation, modus operandi. When you give that speech, what is it that you want from traders who are joining the firm in order for our group and our team to perform?
Yeah. So so much to unpack on so many elements of that there. But if we start off with that example, I think it's a great example to use because we are now running at almost full capacity now on our grad floor. So you have a lot of very individualistic opinions, ideas, which is great. We're very open, and it's one thing I'm always very big on the grad floor is the discussions and the differences of opinion, so everyone can grow organically together, while obviously, of course, sticking to the frameworks that we have. And again, this whole self-improvement and this whole, working on our own processes is super, super important. And there are certainly so many places where that is indeed necessary, but just as necessary for me, especially on that grad floor and also on the live floor, on every floor. There has to have this symbiosis relationship between that, because you need as a collective, a very positive growth, because there can be negative growth. For instance, and one of the examples that I used to the guys yesterday is because of the way the desks are, and maybe there's a speaker that some of the grads who are on the further stage of the 6-month program, because of course we've got the blueprint program, which on that second stage they're being evaluated on different types of processes and of course performance and bottom line, and they're listening in for every word, and they're trying, of course everybody's taking their careers and their development seriously, but for them it really matters. Now for the guys who have just started, they're new to the idea. They might have of course missed the idea that there's maybe a speaker or not, and there'll be conversations, and my job is to say, of course there are times for conversations. All of the new grads who do join the floor, they need to sort of be led by example by the guys who have been sitting on the floor before them, and to be able to shape shift with how the floor environment develops throughout the course of a day. Of course, people are going to make mistakes. It's absolutely fine. But my opinion and my thing that I'm very big on and on stipulating from the beginning is work with everybody around you and have that kind of symbiosis relationship. And if somebody is saying, look, we are now listening to a speaker, that's fine. They've got to kind of just sit back and go, okay, if these guys are looking and listening to a speaker, I need to listen to a speaker. And that is just going to kind of create a standard on the floor, which is at a minimum of a requirement of a professional floor. We are developing the grads, we're developing conversations, but at the same time, there has to be kind of like a marriage of professionalism that also has to be indoctrinated from the beginning, which is why I'll come across quite strongly at the beginning to set almost floor standards and rules to that set, and they have to work together on that. And you are, it goes to that saying, that obviously that very famous saying of you're only as strong as your weakest link. And I made it very clear to them. Especially the guys, we've got 4 new guys at the moment. Look at the guys who have been around you longer on the floor, because they will set the example. And if they don't, they will be accountable to each other. And I want them to be accountable to each other. I want them to bring each other's weaknesses to the forefront at the beginning of the day and say, look, guys, the floor was too loud yesterday. We don't need Peter or anybody to come onto the floor and see that. We need to be stronger as a collective, because if we're all strong, we're all going to grow together, and we're all going to grow at a much better and quicker rate. So in that sense, that collaboration is just so important, and just as important as, of course, that self-discipline, the self-development that Huberman and all these other guys preach and do talk, and it's great. But in my opinion, that you've got to have a symbiosis, and then that's not just on the grad floor; it's also on the live floor as well.
And yes, and watching the space, one of the fundamental reasons why the London prop scene did disintegrate for a period of time, I think it's rising now again, is that relational intelligence was really low. But you're dealing with a really strange space of traders, as opposed to a team sport, football, where everyone wants to get 2 teams trying to get a ball into a goal. Whereas on trading, everyone has their own goal to hit. And therefore the dynamic, the human interactions actually have to be significantly more skillful. And the trading team, the trading floor manager, the performance culture is significantly more creative in a dynamic state where an individual could be doing really well, another individual cannot be doing really well. You're going to have a different type of emotional disequilibriums happening at that space. And so doing the type of social engineering on a team, one of the most fundamental, profound practices for a team is, if they have an experience, like any individual trader at the end of the day would have not fulfilled what he thought he should have fulfilled at the end of the day. And so he holds himself accountable. And so imagine that you do, at the end of the day, at the end of the week, you forgive yourself in certain areas on where you want to improve yourself. And so when you have a certain team mandate or a team culture that you're trying to communicate, you could have an image of what that looks like, and it might not fulfill that image at the end of the day. And then what happens with most traders, they go insular. They go into themselves. And I know you have those deep discussions, because what happens is a trader goes inside of himself, decides I'm no longer going to share with anybody else on the floor. I'm no longer going to get, and we had a big team meeting on this, just 2 weeks ago. We had a nice, incredible, open, frank discussion, and a strong team. A real strong team is a team that can have open discussions to then iterate and improve and compound. A weak team is they keep secrecy, they keep quiet, isolated, they allow the imagination to fester or to build these new types of stories of why I don't get along with this trader. But a team that can resolve, you're effectively accelerating multiple eyes, multiple minds on huge opportunities, especially if the narrative is thick and heavy. It's and we've seen it this year on somewhat, a couple of our floors where the communication was strong and powerful. There's the subtle nuances that somebody's going to mention something that you're able to get onto that trade. But that kind of meta-institutionalized perspective of the self, the individual, and I think teams that start learning before they judge someone's just maybe smashed a screen on a desk. Someone has, just has their energy low. And we spoke about this in our floor meeting. Take leadership. If you are feeling in a good place and there's a trader or two in a space where their emotion is charging at a negative rate, how do I take a leadership position in order to raise the vibration, the communication vibration of the floor? And why raise a communication vibration? At the same time, maybe do a little message and a check-in. Are you okay? Is there anything I can help with you? An empathetic check-in. Because what actually normally happens is that someone's kicking up. We think he's selfish, an idiot. You know what? We're all going to keep quiet. This is going to be a day, and none of us is going to communicate. And all you're doing is feeding something that is never going to improve upon. And so the teams that are willing, like an individual, willing to kind of have these frank discussions, whereas 99% of teams don't, you start becoming the rare team. You start becoming the team that can solve challenges, because there'll always be, every month there'll be a new challenge. There'll be, some subtle politics. This is human behavior. But the smartest are the ones who are able to navigate them. And so, our meetings on the Cyprus floors over the last, of the last couple of years, you're seeing a growth and awareness and an appreciation. And don't get us wrong, like, we're not here to sugarcoat anything. We've had challenges. We have challenges on every one of every one of our floors. But it's up to individuals within the team. It's up to elders, who are in a space of experience with, either individuals, having families. How do we create that sense of community? How do we create that sense of connection? How do we create that how do we build shared cognition? Because a floor that communicates effectively in real time, the performance of each one of those individuals is probably 10x than a trader who has his headphones on, switches off to everybody else, gets caught in his narcissistic route. And I've seen this on a risk screen for 20 years. I've watched the divergence between a good group, and sometimes a good group would have a lot of good traders, but a couple of those good traders maybe going remote for some specific reasons. All of a sudden, the divergence between even that good group has maybe not as skillful traders, how they overtake the previously very good traders over time, because they become this multi-scalable cellular organism in action. And part of that, it needs trust. It needs a good culture that everyone buys into, and it needs to have effective repair protocols. And
to go on that point, I was actually talking to one of our traders just recently on this very thing, and this journey, the journey of a trader. I mean, the journey of being a human being just has fragility, right? In so many senses, right, of the word. And when you're doing a journey like this, and the emotions start to wear, and they come into place, it's very easy to kind of, like you're saying, encapsulate yourself. Barriers go up. I just want to kind of like focus on myself, and all you're doing now is shutting yourself out from the rest of the floor, which means you're potentially missing out on so many things within the market or within
So
the
much
day.
edge.
So much edge. And our job, and everybody's job, the traders themselves, to be able to almost find, and there may be something that needs repairing or something that needs dealing with, to deal with it at the beginning of the day. Go outside, have their chats, discuss on how they can go back onto that floor. It's a new day, new headspace, and suddenly you see the rest of the day that collective is there again. It's a nucleus.
Oh,
like
the energy is just so
the energy.
different.
Oh, it's so different, and everyone benefits because everyone. It's like what I said, and all of this stuff that I see on the live, because I'm sitting there in the thick of it, and I'm bringing that all onto that grad floor. And then they're probably not even seeing it to that extent yet. And hopefully, if they're watching this, and they will be watching this, they will see that, because you, like I said before, you also have negative growth. And when you have that one person shutting themselves down, then the other person might say, well, in that case, I'm also going to be a bit quiet. And then it's
Well, it's the mimicry. Like within empathy, one of the elements of empathy, is that we do mirror. There was a scientific experiment on babies, and they played them different sounds, and they played a couple of babies another baby crying. All of a sudden, the other baby started crying, and so it's that ability to short circuit the emotional discharge that isn't for the benefit of the floor as quick as possible. It's always going to happen because we're losing. And then how do we capture a state of performance back as quickly as possible? So if an opportunity comes, the team, someone spots it in one part of the room or hears something or sees something, we talk about, a news or a narrative observation. How do they increase their operational speed as a collective? And I know, just sorry for interrupting you, like you keep on having these discussions, never stop on a floor, right? Because emotions come, we get hijacked by emotions, our ego, and then once that dust settles, I mean, do you have any recent story? You probably have a bunch. You're probably trying to keep
so
it.
where do I which do I pick? Again, we had calling out something, right? Seeing something and not getting a reaction function of that you would expect on the floor. One of the traders was calling something out. It's quite late in the evening, so not everybody's there on the floor. They're not entering in their position, and there's the frustration. And then it kind of then spitballs into something else later on because they found out somebody else had something and didn't talk. And instead of the individuals, the traders themselves, go saying, okay, look, how can we improve this and better this for tomorrow?
This process for tomorrow.
The market's always there tomorrow. There's always a time. There's always space for improvement. There's always time for improvement. But in the moment, the emotions take them down, and there's that emotional response. And look, it's going to happen. They're going to get into those emotional states. But seeing the maturity, and again, referring to this one particular example, I was thinking, okay, I'm going to have to deal with this in the morning, because it was something that was quite late in the evening. It's already being dealt with between themselves. And that for me is already emotional intelligence just refining itself, because they've already kind of encountered these issues, and they're thinking, well, we know, because they do know. We know as a collective we are stronger. We all see the markets from different lenses. If we can all just be on that same that vibration, that same frequency, we are all going to have a better day in general.
Right? And think about it. If you become a trading team, if all individuals are by default institutionalized by a self-sufficiency, so-called propaganda, self-improvement, narcissistic type of behavior, and you enter the trading domain, it's almost, if you can overcome for yourself to mature and learn how to develop relationships, improve your relational intelligence, you're actually growing as a human being. And they say, care is probably one of the highest form of intelligence. Amazing research paper by a man who'd probably be nominated for a Nobel laureate Michael Levin. Had an incredible conversation with him about scaling teams and scaling intelligence. And that ability of seeing young traders come into the space who are in good shape, good like everything about the self, the kind of traders we want, who are looking to improve themselves. But imagine improving yourself and improving relationships. And then you're just probably going to be a better husband, wife, father, mother, and so seeing developing good relationships on a trading floor, understanding that sometimes it's going to be a tough day, but you can remedy it effectively and fast. Man, that trading team that can do that is a trading team that I'm scared of the type of performance that they could deliver. But it needs sometimes a central axis to get the team together to have that discussion, and effectively, their main, and I've wrote down main type of 5 outcomes that you'd want every team to almost have placated on their floor when they walk onto the floor, is to think collectively under pressure. So like when things are moving around, how can we communicate what's happening, what we're observing? Think collectively under pressure. And then there are tactics and protocols and tactics that we always, that we're thinking about all the time on the training floor. Communicated operational speed. Imagine that, like just the latency transfer or the low latency transfer of information. Probably number 3 is the most important one for me, is repair conflict instantly. I think sometimes you can let something, the emotional charge is so high, maybe sleep on it for a night before you speak to somebody, a fellow brother. And what we're trying to do is create a brotherhood, because I think brotherhood is missing in our culture. And therefore, if it's missing in our culture, it means it's going to be even harder to do it in a trading floor when there's fight or flight mode consistently. So how do you create brotherhood? How do you kind of create some of these, wonderful mantras in Buddhism, Christianity of, thy neighbor, and those elements? Replace ego with shared mission. Imagine if you think like on the team and everyone thinks on that. Like, this is why the Navy SEALs operate incredibly well. It's why the All Black rugby team, the Richie McCaw era, they had an incredible team philosophy. The rugby world champions for the last 2 World Cups, South Africa, there's this incredible speech by the head coach, Rossi Erasmus, and he's standing up after they just lost to Ireland. They still won that, the World Cup. They lost to Ireland, and he stands up there and he says the guys weren't feeling enough pain collectively as a team. And then he says, Sia Kolisi, who's the Springbok captain, is not bigger than South Africa. South Africa is bigger than South Africa. Kind of that shared mission. So replace ego, shared mission, and build emotional endurance through connection. And so those 5 elements, if a team can have a kind of operating procedure of how we deal with conflict, how we communicate in real time, but the most, again, how we deal with conflict, because conflict never, ever goes away.
Yeah. And there's just going back onto the point where you said about, it's something that I was talking to a trader as well. It's just being a better human being is our goal, as well as being a better trader, because it's going to work hand in hand. And seeing that thing of this whole aspect of the teamwork, I even see it even from the grad level when the new guys come in. It's new characters. They don't know how to deal with each other. They don't know how to interact with each other. And then suddenly, where some guys are, they're comfortable in the space where they feel that they're in control and they understand the space. You've got the new guys coming in and challenging that, which is what we want. We want that because it's that challenging, it's that resourcefulness of the individuals on how they're going to improve their situation. And it's something, from our top tier teams to our live training floors to our grad floors, we need to see that consistency of that teamwork building, because that is the nucleus.
I mean, such a good point when you say that, you have kind of maybe some more established junior traders, new traders come into the floor that, maybe unsettles whatever the current communication paradigm. How do they first listen? Like, we want the newer traders to be able to listen to the vibration of the floor, but life is VUCA. We've spoken this about before. Life is volatility, uncertainty, chaos, and ambiguity. And the ones individuals and collectively who deal with that the best perform the best, and that's kind of your performance enhancement. One of my fundamental pillars and belief is that strategic collaboration, connection, good social interactions, powerful interactions is one of the best performance enhancing drugs on the floor.
And creates a world-class team and keeps that going and going and going. And also just to add to that as well, because this is just such a vast topic.
So subject,
and it's a subject that is very close to our hearts because it's that performance aspect. We had a guy who came for the week to sit in the offices, and he's going to be coming onto our desk in January. And that was the one thing. He comes from that sports background, that teamwork background. And a lot of the feedback that I get from him is that what you have here, even on the grad level, of this teamwork and this growth of that organically has to mature, is something that I can't wait to be a part of. From somebody who's been trying to do this for a number of years at home, did the career program, did the blueprint program, and is now obviously come and seen what it actually means to be in a group environment, in a team environment, in a world-class team environment of maturity, growth, and mindset, because it's not just about the charts. It's not just about individualism.
It's not about the charts. It's not about individualism. And I think those who are watching this video, those who are currently on training floors, who have dealt with, I'd love to know, how do you deal with friction? How do you deal when you're training? Do you shut off to your floor for a period of time? Do you just have you shut off for your entire career and you no longer know your neighbor on a training floor? How do you deal with conflict? What happens when you're in that space? Anyone who is watching this video who's on a floor or who isn't on a floor, how do you think you deal yourself in teams when you're facing conflict, and how do you connect in community? And I think our world will, by design, everything's fractal, in my sense, becomes a better place when we have shared, mission, community interactions. And so love to, on the comments below, just how do you deal with friction on a trading floor?